Imagine you're sitting on your couch, right? You're staring at your phone.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Exactly. And you have this digital shopping cart open. Inside that cart is like a $300 heavy-duty winter coat.
Oh, a classic impulse buy setup.
Right. And intellectually, you know you don't actually need it. I mean, you already own a coat.
Your bank account is probably practically begging you to close the app.
Totally. You've looked at all the features, you've weighed the cost, and the logical side of your brain is just firmly saying no.
But then something shifts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right near the checkout button, this little red timer starts flashing. It says, flash sale ends in 14 minutes, only 2 items left in your size.
And just like that, the entire biological landscape of your brain it completely shifts.
Exactly. Your heart rate actually spikes. Your palms might get a little sweaty. Suddenly, all that cold, hard logic, that mental spreadsheet you were relying on, it just completely evaporates.
You hit buy now before you even realize what your thumb is doing.
Exactly. Why does that happen? Like, why do we abandon reason so quickly when we're at the virtual or physical cash register? Today, we are wading into the deeply irrational, sometimes uncomfortable, and just utterly fascinating psychology of why we actually buy things.
I mean, it's a commercial landscape that most of us think is driven by numbers and utility.
Right.
But it's actually entirely driven by invisible emotional currents.
Yeah, and for those of you listening right now, whether you're, a small business owner desperately trying to figure out why your incredible product isn't selling,
Right.
or maybe you're a consumer trying to decode your own seemingly irrational late-night shopping habits, or honestly, just someone who is insanely curious about the hidden gears of human psychology.
This deep dive is custom built for you.
Our mission today is to completely dismantle the illusion of the rational buyer. We're moving way past traditional feature-heavy sales tactics.
Because to truly understand commerce, you have to understand human vulnerability.
You really do. And to help us decode all of this, we're exploring a really eye-opening text by Walmsley. It's titled, Feel My Pain, Addressing Customer Pain Points for Better Sales.
It's a fantastic read.
It really is. Over the course of this conversation, we're going to look at the evolutionary biology of fear. We'll examine how our deepest personal values dictate where we swipe our credit cards.
And we're going to dissect 5 very specific real-world case studies from Walmsley's research.
Yeah, we're even going to look at how businesses measure something as abstract as empathy using hard data. So think of this as your shortcut to becoming a master of behavioral economics without having to drown in all that marketing jargon.
It really is a journey from the abstract emotions of the buyer all the way to the empirical data of the seller.
Yeah.
And the core premise that Walmsley establishes right away is that people, despite what they might confidently tell a pollster or even tell themselves.
All right. We all like to think we're smart shoppers.
Exactly. But they do not consistently buy based on logic. Their decisions are overwhelmingly dictated by emotional triggers and what the text identifies as pain points.
Okay, let's unpack this concept of a pain point, because when I hear that phrase, my mind immediately goes to, like, a physical injury, like a pebble in my shoe.
That's a really great starting point, actually. A physical pebble causes physical friction.
Right.
What Walmsley is talking about is psychological friction. So a pain point is defined as any specific problem, frustration, or unmet need that a customer experiences in their life.
Okay.
It's basically the gap between how a customer wants their life to operate and how it actually operates.
So it's not just, I need a new vacuum cleaner.
No. The vacuum cleaner is just the object. The pain point is the sheer lack of time a working parent has to clean their house.
Oh, I see.
Or it's the frustration of navigating terrible customer service when their old vacuum broke.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Right. Or the financial anxiety of feeling like every high-quality appliance is just priced out of their reach. The pain point is the distress itself.
Wow. Okay. And the space inside that gap between the ideal life and the frustrating reality is just entirely filled with emotion.
Absolutely.
Walmsley argues that these emotions, whether it's, a sudden wave of nostalgia, a desire for happiness, or very often fear, completely overpower rational thought during the purchasing process.
Every single time.
But I want to understand the mechanism here. Why does feeling always seem to beat thinking, like biologically?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at the neurobiology.
Okay, lay it on me.
The human brain processes information in stages. So the emotional center of the brain, specifically the amygdala and the limbic system, is evolutionarily much, much older.
Older than the logical parts.
Yes. And because of that, it reacts infinitely faster than the prefrontal cortex.
Wait, so just to clarify for everyone listening, the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain responsible for our logical spreadsheet-style thinking.
Right, there's three.
The part that does math and plans for the future.
Yes, the prefrontal cortex is basically the rational accountant of the brain. The amygdala, on the other hand, is the alarm bell.
The lizard brain.
Exactly. It's the lizard brain that tells us to run away from a rustling bush because it might be a bear.
Right. Better safe than sorry.
So when a customer encounters a product or a brand, they aren't immediately processing the technical specifications with their prefrontal cortex. The amygdala gets the information first.
Oh, wow.
They are processing how that interaction makes them feel on a purely primal level. Do they feel understood? Do they feel safe?
Right.
Do they feel like this business actually comprehends their daily struggles?
It's almost like the logical brain eventually steps in later just to justify the decision the emotional brain already made.
That is exactly what happens.
I mean, I'll catch myself doing this all the time. I'll buy something expensive and then tell my friends, oh, but it has a 10-year warranty, so it's actually an investment.
When the truth is...
The truth is, I just really liked how it made me feel when I tried it on.
Right. The initial decision was made the moment the emotional connection occurred. The logic is just the alibi.
The alibi, I love that.
Walmsley's text emphasizes that when consumers feel genuinely understood and valued, they engage. It is entirely about creating a narrative that speaks to the limbic system, not just the prefrontal cortex.
It reminds me of an analogy I was mulling over while reading through the source material.
Oh, let's hear it.
Let's go back to that heavy-duty winter coat from the very beginning of our deep dive. Logically, on paper, you're buying a certain thickness of synthetic insulation, a high-grade zipper, and like a square yard of waterproof fabric.
Right, the specs.
You are trading your currency for those physical materials. But emotionally, you aren't buying fabric at all.
You're really not.
You're buying the comfort of not freezing to death at a bus stop. You're buying the feeling of safety when you're caught in a sudden snowstorm. Or maybe, depending on how the company branded the coat, you're buying the nostalgia of playing in the snow as a kid, you know? Feeling totally invincible against the elements. You are buying the feeling.
The fabric is merely the delivery mechanism for the feeling. And honestly, this is where so many businesses fail, according to the text.
How so?
Well, if a brand only markets the technical specifications of the fabric, they are completely missing the actual reason the customer walked into the store.
Right.
They are ignoring the customer's pain point, which, in your coat example, is the physical discomfort and the emotional dread of being cold and unprotected.
So for everyone listening right now, I want you to think about your last major purchase.
Think hard about it.
Yeah, maybe it was a car, a new smartphone, or even just like a premium brand of coffee you decided to splurge on this week. Was it really a spreadsheet-driven, completely logical choice based solely on utility and price?
Probably not.
Right. Or if you dig a little deeper, was there an emotional itch you were trying to scratch? Did you buy the car for the fuel efficiency or for the feeling of status?
Or maybe the feeling of safety for your kids.
Exactly. Did you buy that $6 coffee for the caffeine? Or did you buy it for the 5 minutes of uninterrupted peace and comfort it represented in the middle of a chaotic morning?
Once you start viewing your own behavior through this psychological lens, the illusion of the rational buyer shatters very quickly.
It really does. It's kind of humbling.
It is. You realize how driven you are by these invisible forces. And this brings us to one of the most potent emotional triggers Walmsley discusses.
Right, because we've talked about comfort and nostalgia.
Yeah, but if emotions like happiness and nostalgia are powerful motivators, they still pale in comparison to the emotion that fundamentally wired our ancestors for survival.
Fear.
Fear.
We are moving from the warm and fuzzy feelings of nostalgia straight into the primal, anxiety-inducing territory of fear.
Yes, we are.
The text explicitly points out that fear is one of the most significant emotional triggers driving modern consumer behavior.
It is the ultimate motivator, simply because it's tied to self-preservation. But what's fascinating here is how the text categorizes this.
How do you mean?
Well, what the text does brilliantly is map how these ancient survival fears manifest in a modern commercial landscape. I mean, we aren't running from predators on the savannah anymore.
Right. No saber-toothed tigers at the mall.
Exactly. We aren't foraging for berries.
Yeah.
But our brains react with the exact same biological intensity to modern threats.
Okay, what kind of modern threats are we talking about here?
Walmsley details several specific types of fear that dominate the consumer mindset. There's the fear of missing out, widely known as FOMO.
Oh, FOMO is huge.
There's the fear of financial loss, the fear of social rejection,
That's a big one.
the paralyzing fear of making a poor choice and looking foolish, and the fear of simply being left behind while everyone else upgrades their lives and becomes more efficient.
It's wild to think that buying the wrong brand of accounting software for your small business or picking the wrong vacation package for your family triggers the exact same ancient survival circuitry as encountering a physical threat in the wild.
It sounds extreme, but the human body doesn't distinguish between types of stress. Cortisol is cortisol.
Wow.
Reacting to a perceived threat is a deeply instinctual response. When a consumer looks at a complex product and worries, what if this breaks and I lose my money?
Or what if I buy this outfit and my peers judge me?
Yes. They are experiencing a genuine biological stress response. In the brain's calculus, a bad purchase represents a loss of resources, a loss of tribal status, or a loss of security.
Which perfectly explains why scarcity and urgency are such legendary marketing tactics. I mean, going back to my example of the online shopping cart.
Oh, the flashing timer.
Yes. When a website flashes sale ends in 14 minutes, it's just pure weaponized FOMO. You aren't logically calculating if you need the item.
Your brain is screaming, resources are depleting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Secure the asset before you are left with nothing to survive the winter.
And the mechanism there is fascinating. The urgency creates a sudden spike in fear, right? A localized burst of anxiety. It actually forces the prefrontal cortex to shut down because thinking takes too much time when resources are vanishing and lets the amygdala take the wheel.
So buying the product is suddenly perceived as the only way to soothe that acute fear.
Exactly. You buy it to return the brain to a baseline state of calm. You buy it just to make the anxiety stop.
Okay, I have to push back here for a second because hearing it described like that, exposing the biological mechanics of it,
Yeah.
wait, is leveraging fear actually ethical? It sounds incredibly manipulative. It sounds like businesses are intentionally scaring their customers, stressing them out, just to trick them into buying something they might not even need.
That is a crucial distinction, and I'm glad you brought it up. The text draws a very hard line here through its framework of empathy. The strategy Walmsley advocates for is absolutely not about inventing fear or terrorizing your audience. Fabricating a threat that doesn't exist just to sell a solution is manipulative.
It's a scam, basically.
Right. And frankly, it's unsustainable for long-term brand loyalty. Customers eventually realize they've been tricked and they never come back.
So what is the ethical application then?
What Walmsley is suggesting is acknowledging the existing anxieties that customers are already carrying around with them.
Oh, so the fear is already there.
The fear is already in the room before the business even speaks. The customer's already afraid of making a bad financial decision.
Right.
They're already afraid of buying a product that is too complicated to use or a service that will leave them stranded. The ethical application is to position your business as the secure, reliable solution that actively alleviates that pre-existing worry.
I see. It's like you aren't walking up to someone and saying, "Did you know the bridge up ahead might collapse while you're driving over it? Better buy my helicopter." You are finding people who are already standing at the edge of a scary, rushing river, terrified of how they're going to get across.
Yes.
And you are saying, "I see that you're afraid of the water. I built a very sturdy, very safe bridge right here, specifically for you."
That is a fantastic way to visualize it. It's about validation, not manipulation.
Yeah.
You are acknowledging their pain point, their fear, and offering the cure.
Which naturally leads to the next massive question for any business, right?
How do you actually figure out what your customers are secretly afraid of?
Right, because people don't exactly broadcast their deepest insecurities. Like, a customer doesn't usually walk into a retail store or visit a website and announce, "Hello, I am deeply afraid of social rejection and financial ruin. Please direct me to the shoe department."
They certainly do not. They hide their fears behind polite complaints about price or minor feature requests or just vague dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
And this is where the text becomes a true masterclass in empathy. Walmsley outlines how businesses must become essentially psychological detectives.
To uncover those hidden pain points.
Exactly. He details 5 specific techniques to map the emotional landscape of the buyer.
This part of the text really resonated with me. It's like being a therapist for your customers. You have to listen to what they aren't saying.
That's a great comparison.
Let's walk through these 5 techniques. The first one is active listening. But Walmsley specifies this isn't just about recording the literal words they say on a customer service call, right?
No. Active listening, in this context, requires a much deeper level of engagement.
Like what?
It means paying acute attention to the tone of voice, the body language if they're in person, the pauses, and the hidden emotions lingering just beneath the surface of the conversation.
Give me an example of how that works in practice.
Sure. Imagine a customer is asking a sales rep about a return policy. The literal words are about logistics, right?
Yeah.
How many days do I have to bring this back?
Sounds pretty standard.
But the tone, the hesitation, the repetition of the question, the tense posture that might reveal a deep-seated fear of financial loss.
Oh.
Or perhaps it reveals a past trauma with a different company that scammed them or made it impossible to get a refund.
That makes so much sense.
The detective work is hearing the anxiety, not just the logistical question. A good listener realizes they need to reassure the customer's fear of being trapped, not just hand them a receipt.
The second technique the text outlines is using surveys and feedback sessions, but specifically relying on open-ended questions.
This is vital. Multiple choice questions only validate what the business already thinks the pain points are.
Because you're providing the options.
Right. If you send a survey that says, what is your biggest problem? A, B, or C? You force the customer to pick one.
But you completely miss problem D.
Exactly. Problem D is the one that is actually keeping them awake at night. Open-ended questions allow the customer to vent.
They can just pour it all out.
They allow the customer to tell a story. And inside those stories are the raw, unfiltered emotional triggers.
Technique number 3 is analyzing online reviews and social media comments to find recurring themes. Which makes sense because the internet is basically a massive repository of unfiltered human emotion.
It is the most honest feedback loop available, for better or worse.
But mostly worse sometimes.
Right. When a customer is frustrated enough to log online and leave a public 1-star review, they have entirely bypassed their polite social filters.
They are angry and they want you to know it.
By scrutinizing these comments, and importantly, not just on your own products, but reading the reviews of your competitors as well, you can identify sweeping industry pain points.
What does an industry pain point look like practically speaking?
Well, if everyone in your industry is complaining on social media about slow shipping, the superficial pain point is time.
Right, I got my stuff faster.
But the psychological pain point is the feeling of being disrespected.
Interesting.
It's the feeling of being deprioritized by a massive corporation the moment the credit card clears. If a business can spot that overarching frustration, they can design their entire marketing message around respect and reliability, not just fast trucks.
That brings us to the fourth technique, and this is where I found a really fascinating contradiction in the reading.
Oh.
Yeah. Walmsley talks about data analytics tracking purchasing habits and abandoned shopping carts.
Yes.
Now, we've been talking for the last 20 minutes about emotion, empathy, neurobiology, and listening to the tone of people's voices, and suddenly we are looking at cold, hard, lifeless data points on a screen.
It seems like a pivot.
How does a spreadsheet of abandoned digital carts tell us anything about human fear?
This raises a profound question about how we fundamentally view data in the modern age. Data is not the opposite of emotion. Data is the fingerprint of emotion.
The fingerprint of emotion. Wow.
An abandoned digital cart isn't just a glitch in the matrix or a mathematical error to be optimized. Walmsley defines it beautifully. It is a mapped moment of human hesitation.
I love that phrasing so much. A mapped moment of hesitation. It makes a line of code sound so human.
Think about the physical equivalent. Imagine you're in a grocery store. You spent 20 minutes picking out items. Your cart is full.
Okay.
You walk to aisle 4, look at something on the shelf, and suddenly you just abandoned the physical cart right there in the middle of the aisle and walk out of the store.
You'd look completely insane. People would wonder what terrified you so much that you fled the building.
Exactly. But we do it online a million times a day, and businesses just treat it as a math problem.
That is such a good point.
When a customer finds a product, desires it enough to put it in the cart, navigates to the checkout page, and then stops. Why do they stop?
Right. Was the shipping cost a sudden shock that triggered a fear of financial loss?
Or did the site ask for too much personal information, triggering a fear of identity theft?
Oh, I hate when sites do that.
That abandoned cart is a loud, emotional cry for help hidden inside a quiet data point.
And that leads perfectly into the fifth and final detective technique, customer journey mapping.
Yes. This is the practice of visualizing the entire process, right? From the first time a customer sees an ad on Instagram to the website experience, all the way to the moment they actually open the physical box in their living room.
The goal here is to map the emotional highs and lows across that entire timeline. Every interaction is a touch point.
So you're looking for where the mood drops.
If you map the journey and realize that, say, step 3 of your purchasing process requires the customer to make a complex, highly technical choice they don't understand.
Like picking a specific wattage or compatibility spec?
Right. You can predict with near certainty that cognitive load, fear, and confusion will spike right at that exact moment.
And once you know where the spike happens, you can put a safety net there.
Precisely. You can add a simple buying guide or a pop-up offering a live chat with an expert directly at that touch point to catch them as they fall. You soothe the pain point before it causes them to abandon the cart.
So we've diagnosed the fear and we've mapped the pain. We know what pushes people away, but fear is a repellent.
Yes.
What pulls people toward a good outcome? This is where Walmsley completely shifts the paradigm in the text. Because while fear is the stick, shared values are the ultimate carrot.
This is a crucial pivot. While addressing fear neutralizes a negative emotion, aligning with personal values creates a profound positive attraction.
It's like a magnet.
The text argues that in our current commercial landscape, consumers do not just buy to survive anymore. They buy to express who they are.
Right.
They buy to signal their identity to the world.
Walmsley details specific values that modern consumers are increasingly prioritizing. Things like sustainability, ethical sourcing of materials, safety, security, and dedicated community support.
We are witnessing the massive, undeniable rise of the socially conscious consumer. It is no longer enough for a product to just function properly. It has to mean something.
Because every single purchase is increasingly viewed as a vote, right? A vote for the kind of world the consumer wants to live in. I find this fascinating because it changes the very nature of the transaction. Like, if I'm buying a t-shirt and I know the company uses ethically sourced cotton and pays fair wages, how does that actually alter my psychological state at the checkout?
Well, when a business visibly champions a cause that a customer deeply cares about, it does something magical to the purchasing psychology.
What's it do?
It completely mitigates the fear of purchasing.
Wait, how?
Because the purchase is no longer just a selfish acquisition that might turn out to be a waste of money. It is transformed into a moral act.
So the moral high ground acts as a buffer against buyer's remorse.
Exactly. Think about it. If the ethically sourced t-shirt shrinks a little bit in the wash, the customer is far more forgiving than they would be with a fast fashion brand.
Oh, that's so true. I've totally done that. It's a little snug, but they save the rainforest.
Right. They don't feel cheated because they know their money went toward a good cause.
Right.
They're willing to absorb a little bit of product imperfection in exchange for moral alignment.
It turns a cold financial transaction into a communal effort.
The business and the customer are suddenly on the same team, fighting for the same values against a common enemy, like pollution or unfair labor.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The text points out that this alignment of shared values is what transforms regular, everyday customers into fierce brand ambassadors.
Yes, they stop being just consumers and start acting like evangelists.
They drive word-of-mouth referrals because they aren't just recommending a product anymore. They are spreading their own belief system.
And we cannot overstate how important that is. Word of mouth is the absolute most potent form of marketing on the planet.
Because it bypasses all the traditional filters of skepticism.
Precisely. If a billboard tells you a brand is trustworthy, your brain's defense mechanisms go up immediately.
Yeah.
You know it's a paid advertisement.
Right, they paid to say that.
But if a close friend tells you a brand is trustworthy because they share your core values, your fear of making a poor choice drops near zero.
You essentially borrow your friend's trust.
Trust is the currency of values.
For you listening, take a second right now and consider the brands that you are fiercely loyal to, the ones you will actually defend in an argument with a friend.
We all have at least one.
We do. The ones you will gladly pay full price for without even looking for a coupon. Do they just have the best technical features, or do they share a core value with you?
Do they make you feel like you belong to a specific kind of community, a specific tribe?
Because that feeling of belonging is the exact loyalty Walmsley is teaching businesses how to build.
Now, psychological theory is excellent, but to truly understand how this operates in the wild, we need to see it applied.
Yes, absolutely.
The text provides a remarkably practical set of examples to demonstrate exactly how this works across wildly different industries.
The case studies, this is where the rubber meets the road. I don't want to rush through these because Walmsley's examples are just brilliant.
They really clarify everything.
He walks us through 5 distinct businesses that took these concepts, identifying the hidden pain points, soothing the underlying fear, and aligning with customer values, and turned them into immense loyalty. Let's break these down thoroughly, one by one.
Sounds good.
The first is the local bakery.
Ah, the bakery. This is a brilliant example of addressing a highly specific, very personal pain point. On the surface, it's just a place that sells pastries.
Right.
But they recognize through careful observation that a segment of their local community struggled with dietary restrictions.
Specifically, the intense need for reliable, gluten-free, and vegan options.
Right.
Which, if you've ever lived with a severe dietary restriction, or if you have a child who does, you know the pain point isn't just, I want a cupcake and I can't have one.
No, it goes much deeper.
The true pain point is the feeling of exclusion at a birthday party. It's the anxiety of having to interrogate a waiter about cross-contamination while everyone else at the table just waits for you to finish so they can order. It's the sheer exhaustion of always having to say no thank you when everyone else is celebrating and enjoying themselves.
Exactly. The physical pain is dietary, but the emotional pain is social isolation.
It's the feeling of being a burden.
By offering dedicated, rigorously safe, gluten-free, and vegan options, this bakery didn't just sell alternative flour.
That's the fabric of the coat.
Yes, they sold inclusion, they sold relief from anxiety, they sold the ability for a parent to buy their child a normal birthday cake without fear.
And the business result of that empathy.
The result was that they built a fiercely loyal community of people who finally felt seen, understood, and safe.
And that demographic will not go to any other bakery.
Never. Even if a competitor opens up directly across the street with cheaper prices and flashier frosting, the original bakery retains the customer base.
Because they earn their trust by alleviating their deepest anxiety.
Bruh.
You don't abandon the person who made you feel safe.
It's so powerful when you look at it that way.
Okay, case study number 2 takes this concept a step further into deep emotional vulnerability. It's the skincare brand.
This one is fascinating.
Now, the beauty industry is notorious, maybe more than any other industry, for leveraging fear. The fear of aging, the fear of not being attractive enough, the fear of wrinkles. But this brand flipped the script entirely.
It did. Traditionally, a skincare brand shows flawless, heavily airbrushed models. The psychological mechanism there is to highlight the customer's imperfections by comparison.
Triggering shame.
Exactly, triggering shame and then selling the product as the cure for that shame. But this brand leveraged a completely different emotional trigger.
They shared authentic, raw, unedited customer stories about severe skin issues, right? Like cystic acne, aggressive scarring, rosacea.
Conditions that cause genuine, debilitating social anxiety.
They boldly named the pain. They didn't hide it behind a soft focus lens.
They brought the pain into the light. And the psychological mechanism at play here is fascinating. By showcasing real vulnerability, they triggered in-group, out-group dynamics.
How does that work?
Usually, people with severe skin issues feel like the out-group. They feel alienated by beauty standards.
Sure.
This brand made them the in-group. When humans see shared vulnerability, our brains actually release oxytocin, the bonding hormone. It generates immediate trust.
So the customers weren't just buying a lotion or a serum.
No, they were buying into a support system. They were buying the hope that someone finally understood their literal and figurative scars.
The loyalty generated by shared vulnerability and oxytocin is practically unbreakable, isn't it?
It is. The product almost becomes secondary to the community it represents.
Amazing. Case study number 3 is the home security company. This one is a very direct, intense application of the fear trigger we discussed earlier.
Indeed it is. Home security inherently deals with the ultimate biological fear, a threat to physical safety, the protection of one's family, and the sanctity of the home.
Yeah, you can't get more primal than that.
This company didn't just list the decibel level of their alarms or the resolution of their cameras. They focused on the emotional aspect of safety by utilizing real-life break-in stories in their marketing.
Now, going back to my earlier pushback, is this crossing the line into unethical fear-mongering? Because telling a story about a family getting robbed sounds a lot like inventing terror to sell a camera.
It walks a very fine line, I agree. But according to Walmsley's framework, it succeeds ethically because it validates a fear that homeowners already possess.
Right.
Everyone who owns a home has lain awake at night after hearing a weird noise downstairs. The company isn't inventing the concept of burglary.
That's true.
By showcasing real stories, they validate the fear of danger, which creates a necessary urgency. But, and this is the absolute key to why it works, they do not leave the customer in a state of terror.
Right, they provide the bridge over the river.
Exactly. They immediately present themselves as the reliable shield against that danger. They transform the paralyzing, helpless fear of a break-in into the empowering, proactive action of securing the home.
The psychological transaction is, give us your anxiety and we will give you control.
Perfectly said.
Okay, let's move to case study 4, the eco-friendly clothing brand. This ties directly back to our discussion on personal values.
This brand addressed the pain point of ethical consumerism. For a massive and growing demographic, the pain point of buying clothes isn't price or fit.
What is it?
It is the crushing guilt associated with fast fashion.
Oh, yeah.
It is the awareness of the environmental destruction caused by textile dyes and the horrific labor conditions of garment workers. For this demographic, the very act of buying clothes actually induced moral anxiety.
I've absolutely felt that. Standing in a brightly lit store looking at a super cheap, trendy t-shirt and thinking, someone, somewhere paid the price for this to be so cheap.
Yes.
It literally ruins the joy of the purchase. You feel complicit in something terrible.
That guilt is the exact pain point.
Mm.
So this brand aligned their entire manufacturing process with sustainability and ethical production. They made their supply chain totally transparent.
But the result?
They attracted a socially conscious demographic whose personal values were perfectly aligned with the brand's mission. The purchase became an act of ethical alignment.
It alleviated the guilt and replaced it with pride.
Exactly. The customer could wear the shirt and feel like they were part of the solution, not part of the problem.
And the final case study, number 5, moves away from physical products entirely. The tech startup.
Right. They created a time management software app specifically targeted at small business owners.
Software is often sold purely on features, right? Like integration, speed, interface.
But this startup understood the psychology of their target demographic. The pain point for a small business owner isn't just a literal lack of time.
No.
It is the overwhelming, suffocating feeling of chaos. It's the constant gnawing fear of dropping a vital ball, missing a crucial deadline, and watching the business they sacrificed everything for fall apart.
The emotional pain is a total lack of control.
Exactly.
I know so many entrepreneurs, and that is exactly how they describe their daily lives, just constantly putting out fires and feeling like they're one forgotten email away from total disaster.
So the app didn't market itself as a digital calendar. It sold control.
Oh.
It sold the ability to sleep through the night without waking up in a cold sweat, remembering an unwritten email. It marketed the feeling of having a calm, organized mind.
The result was replacing the feeling of chaos with the feeling of mastery.
And that fostered a deep emotional connection with the users and drove massive, sustained subscription growth.
Looking at all 5 of these case studies together, a local bakery, a vulnerability-driven skincare line, a fear-alleviating security firm, a guilt-free clothing brand, and a chaos-taming software startup, what is the common thread?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying mechanism is identical across all of them.
It doesn't matter what you're selling.
It doesn't matter if you are selling cupcakes, security cameras, or lines of code. The path to loyalty requires identifying a highly specific emotional pain, acknowledging it with deep empathy, and providing a reliable cure.
So knowing the pain is step 1, but communicating that you actually have the cure is step 2.
Right.
How do we do that? This brings us to a fascinating section of Walmsley's text: engineering solutions and easing fears.
Yes.
It's one thing to be a customer detective, to use your active listening and your data and figure out that your audience is terrified of making a bad financial choice. But how do you structurally build a business that actually soothes that fear in real time?
The text provides very specific, actionable operational strategies to address these fears directly. The first strategy is providing radical transparency and information.
What does radical transparency look like in practice?
It looks like aggressively detailed product descriptions. It looks like high-resolution photos from every angle, exact measurements, and, most importantly, crystal clear, hassle-free return policies.
Okay, so making sure there are no surprises.
Exactly. If the customer's hidden fear is, what if I buy this expensive coat and it's the wrong size and I'm stuck with it and I lose my money?
Which is a very common online shopping fear.
Right. A giant unmissable banner on the website that says, free returns, no questions asked, we pay the shipping for 30 days, acts as an immediate psychological pressure release valve.
It transfers all the risk from the nervous buyer to the confident seller.
Yes.
It essentially tells the amygdala, you are safe here, there is no threat.
The second strategy Walmsley suggests is personalizing the experience.
Personalization proves to the customer that they are not just a data point on a spreadsheet.
Right. When a business recognizes past purchases, recommends items based on a specific history, or simply remembers a name and a birthday, it triggers a feeling of being seen and valued.
It's the cheers effect. Sometimes you
Yeah.
just want to go where everybody knows your name.
Exactly. When you feel seen, your guard drops. The inherent fear of being taken advantage of by a cold, faceless corporation diminishes because a relationship has been established.
Strategy number 3 is excellent, empathetic customer service. And we touched on this a bit with active listening, but Walmsley highlights how crucial this is when things actually go wrong.
Yes, because when a product breaks or a shipment is delayed, the customer's pain point is instantly aggravated.
Their worst fears about the company are confirmed. I knew I shouldn't have trusted them.
Right. Empathetic customer service isn't just about offering a refund, it's about repairing the emotional breach.
How so?
Well, an employee who says, "I completely understand why you are angry. I would be incredibly frustrated too if I needed this for a trip and it didn't arrive. I am going to fix this for you right now," can actually build more brand loyalty out of a mistake than if the transaction had gone perfectly in the first place.
Wait, really? A mistake can create more loyalty?
Yes, it's called the service recovery paradox.
Oh, fascinating.
Because when everything goes perfectly, the customer assumes you are just a machine doing your job.
Yeah.
But when things go wrong, and you fix it with deep empathy, you prove that the safety net is real.
You prove that there are humans behind the logo who actually care about the customer's pain.
You got it.
That is incredible. And the final strategy for easing fears is leveraging social proof.
This is the specific antidote to the fear of social rejection and the fear of making a poor choice.
Social proof, which means prominently showcasing positive reviews, testimonials, and user-generated content. It reassures the nervous buyer, right?
Yes, it tells their primal brain, look, the rest of the tribe has already tested this path and it is safe. You will not be isolated or mocked if you make this choice.
It drastically reduces perceived risk by showing that others have survived the transaction.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for the actual marketing messages? Do businesses just run ads saying, hey, we have really good customer service and safe paths?
No. The implication is that businesses must boldly and almost uncomfortably name the pain point in their communication.
Just call it out directly.
Yes. Instead of hiding the problem or pretending their product is magical, they must spotlight the friction. They have to say, we know you hate hidden fees. We hate them too. They feel like a betrayal. That's why our pricing model has 0 hidden fees.
By naming the pain out loud, they build instant credibility.
They prove they understand the dark before they offer the flashlight.
It's such a massive paradigm shift from traditional features and benefits marketing.
It changes everything.
Now, as much as we have talked about feelings and empathy and neurobiology, we have to acknowledge reality.
The bottom line.
A business still has to keep the lights on. They still need a spreadsheet at the end of the day to know if any of this psychological empathy is actually driving revenue.
Of course.
Which brings us to the final major concept in the text, the data behind the emotion or measuring success. How on earth do you put a number on empathy?
It sounds like an oxymoron, measuring empathy. You picture scientists trying to weigh a feeling. But Walmsley transitions beautifully from the emotional to the empirical here. The text highlights 3 distinct key performance indicators, or KPIs, that act as the vital signs of a company's emotional intelligence.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first metric is conversion rates.
Just to define that for everyone, the conversion rate is the percentage of people who visit your physical store or your website and actually buy something rather than just looking and leaving.
Correct. But the text asks us to look at this metric not just as a math problem, but as an empathy metric.
Interesting.
A low conversion rate means a high volume of people experienced your brand, considered your offer, and ultimately decided, no, this doesn't solve my pain.
It is a symptom of a profound disconnect between what the customer secretly needs and what you are loudly offering.
Exactly.
So if I'm a business owner and my conversion rate is terrible, I shouldn't just run more ads.
No.
I should ask myself, what fear am I failing to soothe?
Exactly. If you tweak your messaging to address a specific fear, like adding that no questions asked returns banner, and your conversion rate suddenly spikes, you have successfully measured an increase in your company's empathy. You resonated with their pain.
That is a brilliant way to look at a spreadsheet. You are measuring the resonance of the message.
Yes.
The second KPI is average transaction value, which is simply how much a customer spends in a single visit.
This metric reflects the success of emotional upselling. Now, upselling has a terrible reputation in the consumer world.
Oh, I hate upselling. It usually feels pushy, like a car salesman trying to force you to buy undercoating you don't need.
Right. But when upselling is done through the lens of pain points, it is highly effective and actually appreciated.
How does that work? Give me an example of empathetic upselling.
Let's go back to the heavy winter coat.
Okay.
If a customer buys that coat and the cashier says, "I see you're buying a coat rated for sub-zero temperatures. We have thermal gloves over here that guarantee your fingers won't freeze while you scrape your windshield." The customer doesn't feel like they're being squeezed for more money. They feel cared for.
They feel like the cashier anticipated a pain point they hadn't even thought of yet.
Exactly. When a customer feels deeply understood, they trust you to solve more of their problems, which naturally increases the average transaction value.
Because the trust is already established. Why would I go to a different store to buy gloves when the person in front of me clearly understands my exact need?
It just makes sense.
The third KPI Walmsley highlights is customer acquisition costs. This is how much money a company has to spend on advertising and marketing to get one brand new customer to buy something.
This metric evaluates if your value proposition actually aligns with your target audience's personal values.
I want to look at this from the consumer side for a second.
Go for it.
Because as a listener, as a buyer, this explains so much about my daily internet experience. This explains why I keep seeing relentless, repetitive ads for brands that feel completely misaligned with who I am.
Exactly. If a company's customer acquisition cost is staggeringly high, it means they are trying to force a square peg into a round hole.
They are spending an absolute fortune trying to convince people who do not share their brand's values to buy their product.
It's an uphill battle against the consumer's defense mechanisms.
But if they find the right audience,
If a brand perfectly aligns with a deeply felt pain point and a core set of values, like the eco-friendly clothing brand we discussed, their acquisition costs absolutely plummet.
because the community finds them.
Yes, the shared values trigger that oxytocin, the trust builds, and word of mouth does the marketing for them. The brand stops spending money trying to acquire customers and starts spending money supporting the community that already loves them.
Walmsley also makes a massive point in this final section about fostering a culture of feedback internally within a business. What does that mean for the data?
It means that if your frontline employees, the cashiers, the customer support reps, the sales team who actually talk to the public are not actively encouraged, respected, and rewarded for sharing the emotional insights they gather, your data remains lifeless.
The spreadsheet might tell the executive team that the conversion rate dropped by 5%.
Right. The spreadsheet tells you what happened, but the customer service rep is the only one who can tell you why it happened.
Because they talk to the people.
They're the ones who can say, the conversion rate dropped because customers are calling in terrified of the new, highly complicated checkout process we instituted last week.
Without the human feedback loop from the front lines, the data is just noise. It's a map with no legend.
The humans give the data its story.
They absolutely do. Empathy must flow up the corporate ladder, not just down.
Beautifully said.
Wow. Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. We started with the illusion of the rational spreadsheet brain, traveled through the ancient biology of fear and the modern power of shared values,
We broke down 5 incredible case studies.
and ended up measuring feelings with data. To synthesize all of this, drawing directly from Walmsley's profound conclusion, the ultimate takeaway here is that the future of sales, and really the future of commerce itself, must be obsessively customer-centric.
It requires a total fundamental evolution from a transactional mindset to a relational mindset.
Right. The old transactional mindset was simply, how do I extract money from this person's wallet as quickly as possible?
And the new relational mindset is, how do I deeply understand and heal this person's specific frustration?
Empathy and emotional intelligence are no longer just soft skills relegated to an HR seminar. They are the ultimate hard-hitting business tools of the 21st century.
The businesses that survive, the ones that build unshakable loyalty, will be the ones that master the psychology of pain and relief.
And for you, the listener, I want to leave you with a final thought experiment to mull over. We've spent this entire deep dive looking at how identifying hidden pain points and soothing underlying fears works perfectly for selling products.
It really does.
We've seen how it builds brand loyalty and drives revenue. But what if we took this exact same framework, these same psychological mechanics, and applied them to our personal lives?
Oh, that's interesting.
Think about it. The next time a friend or a partner or a colleague is deeply frustrated or acting irrationally, what if, instead of arguing the pure logic of the situation.
Instead of pulling out your mental spreadsheet to prove them wrong.
Exactly. What if you looked for their hidden pain point? What if you used active listening to hear the tone beneath their angry words?
Right.
What if you searched for the underlying fear, a fear of rejection, a fear of financial instability, a fear of losing control that is actually driving their behavior?
Wow.
Could it be that the secret to a multi-million-dollar sales strategy is actually the exact same secret to being a better, more patient, and more deeply empathetic human being? Maybe we all just want someone to look at us, acknowledge our fears without judgment, and say, I understand why you are afraid of the dark, and I built a bridge so we can cross this together.
It is a profound overlap. The mechanics of human connection, of seeking safety and understanding, do not fundamentally change just because money happens to be involved.
You really don't. It turns out that whether you are trying to heal a broken relationship or just trying to figure out why on earth you bought that ridiculously expensive winter coat at 2 in the morning.
It's never really about the fabric.
It's never about the fabric. It's always about the feeling. But thank you so much for exploring this incredible text with us today. Keep asking questions, keep looking for the hidden pain beneath the surface, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.